it's true in that the US is performing some horrific atrocities, and ultimately, in many ways, when it consistently injects itself into other parts of the world, Afghanistan, Iraq, it makes them infinitely worse, and hundreds of thousands of civilians end up dying, all to increase the power of the US war machine. That's all true. That's all horrifying. But a lot of this, when we get just bogged down on conspiracy theories, again, it ultimately makes the left look ridiculous. Okay, so I have been covering the Jimmy Dore TYT feud that's also involved Kyle Kulinski. I've made several videos on the matter, and one of the things I talked about in my perfect, desire to be the ultimate centrist, all right, to be the omega centrist, was that I was speaking about how the accusations on both sides do not hold up to scrutiny. One of them being that, of course, TYT is funded by NATO. That's what Jimmy Dore was suggesting. You see this? You see how they're funded by NATO? All that kind of stuff. It's just not true. They do have millions and millions of dollars in funding, $20 million, I believe, from a pro-Hillary Clinton think tank. That's just like not something you need to look over the veil to find. It's just there. They're very open about it. You can make a lot of criticisms about it and say there's a reason why it became the way it did because of that funding. Fine. But that's not a real thing. And then I said, by the way, it's kind of weird to suggest that Aaron Matei is directly funded by the Syrian government. Aaron Matei has received a grant that several other people have received. Jackson Hinkle just received it. It does come from a pro-Syrian lobby, but that's different than being directly funded by the government. You're just accepting an award, you're taking the cash, you're cashing it in, and then you're saying, hey, I don't have a problem with receiving this money, even though it will come from these actors. So that's all I said. And then a lot of people online got very mad at me, including a lot of people from the progressive aisle. I'm not going to mention who, but there was a lot of people online who were very, very upset at what had happened. So I decided to look a little deeper. I received all the messages, I received all the emails, and the ones that were a little friendlier, I went into the links they provided. I did some research. I'm going to reveal some of that research today and speak a little bit about what is going on behind the scenes of the scenes. All right. Oh, hello, Vadim. It's good to see you. And thank you very much, Spectacular Schneiderman, for the 1 month gifted sub to both Vadim and Chud Logic. Appreciate both of those. Very kind of you. And everyone go subscribe to Hey It's Vadim. Very good channel.
Insistence that the alt-left exists. And what does that mean? Glenn Greenwald, Michael Tracy, Aaron Matei, and Jimmy Dore. The alt-left. I love it. Yeah. That's not...
The alt-left. Interesting. So that's what the alt-left was all along. We'd heard often about the alt-left, so I'm glad I'm finally figuring out what it is.
What alt-left means. It's not what it ever meant, and it never really caught on anyway. So it's funny that he tries claiming that the people who criticize the establishment and his fake progressive movement are alt-right and alt-left. It's like, dude, maybe you've just lost the plot because you're chasing the dragon, man. You want the ratings, you want the clicks. You look at the supercuts of the Young Turks over the years, and it's really, you can really see how they've compromised over and over and over again.
I saw a clip of them they had the new hire, and she was like 3 days on, and he was like, what career? You don't have a career. Do you ever see that?
Oh, Kim Horcher.
He kind of, and he, as you can tell immediately, he felt horrible about it, but he was so chill. Back then, he was so much more relaxed. He's so like agitated. Things have like tweaked him out over the last like 6 years.
I totally get it. I do.
We
talked about this. We talked about this the other day, man. This is important. When I got started in more actively, publicly in politics, like Occupy Wall Street, I went to Occupy Wall Street because I saw these videos of police like is just dragging a guy by his foot and it's like his hand's bleeding. But I also knew a bunch of hackers because I'd been hanging out at hacker spaces in Los Angeles. I knew a bunch of hackers, around the world actually, because I
Actually, I didn't know that. Let me see if there's any footage of that. Oh shit, there's some clips. Hold on.
There's a new virus in the database.
What's happening?
Oh shit.
Memory. What do I do?
Type cookie, you idiot. I'll head him off at the pass.
Whoa, Tim Pool without a beanie. That's wild. He looks so different. But yeah, no, this is verified. It was real.
We have a zero bug attacking all login and overlay files.
Run antivirus. Give me a systems display.
Fuck, he knows his shit too. Ran antivirus. That's what you should run antivirus if you've got a virus. I mean, how else do you stop the virus? You need the antivirus.
Now we want section 6 to 26. Nope, make that 10 to 40. And 1 to
Oh, look at Tim Pool go.
Dickweeds.
Nice. Damn. Antivirus.
Send a flu shot.
Rabbit, flu shot, someone talk to me.
Oh damn. See, I'm not a hacker, so I don't know what all this means, but I guess a flu shot it's even more extreme.
Case till it overloads a file, then it spreads.
Oh, the catsuit's coming. I just have something planned for it. I'm let's just say I'm practicing. Hacking seems hard.
It's the Gibson, it's finding us too fast.
I'm coming for you, Vadim. I'm coming for your whole grift. So this is what hacking looks like? It looks really cool. Hacking looks fucking fun.
They're at Grand Central Station, lower level. Don't screw up.
Tim Pool's so good too. Okay, well, I'm glad I verified Tim Pool's story. He was part of the hacker community. Let's see where it goes from here.
I made some friends, got some connections. These all were on the left. All the hacking community was on the left. Anti-establishment, anti-Fed, anti-intelligence agencies. They were pro-journalists, pro-information, pro-free speech. And then something changed. A bunch of these hackers all of a sudden became authoritarian and pro-FBI. In fact, some of these people were on Facebook cheering for the FBI raid on Giuliani. And I commented on the post saying, I'm so glad to see you've finally been de-radicalized, that you would now actively support the FBI. And they're like, well, I mean, they're doing the right thing now. Dude, these people on the left used to laugh about the trolling that Weave would do. I can't even say the name of Weave's organization.
So I don't know what he's talking about, but most of the leftists I talk to and hang out with, either online or IRL, they're all pretty on the same side on all those issues. Yeah, they've never been pro FBI. They've never been pro CIA. You're probably thinking about the libs. You got the libs confused because the libs, they started loving the FBI during the Trump years because they thought the FBI was going to save them from Trump. They thought they were going to destroy the Orange Man bad with a wave, a blue wave. A giant blue wave was going to come from the waters and just wash the Orange Man and take him away. That was their belief.
I cannot say some of the things he's done. One of the most notorious trolls, if not the most notorious troll on the internet, saying the most offensive things. A bunch of people on the left recognized the right of free speech, and they were edgy, and they were fun, and they mocked things, and they made jokes. And you had George Carlin, and George.
He just really wants a bunch of lefties that just love screaming the N-word. I think but they're edgy, they're fun.
George Carlin would say all of the racial slurs in the world in his bit. Then something started to change over the past 10 years, rapidly and quickly, where for whatever reason, the leftists fell in line. So imagine you're Gent Uger and you're watching the transformation of your audience. I got to be honest. The last time I saw Gent, he yelled at me because he was losing it.
Oh, of course. There's nothing wrong with laughing at the fact that Rudy Giuliani got raided or that Trump got raided. Yeah, of course. I'm not saying you can't take joy in that. I'm just saying that doesn't change your resolve, most likely. I don't know. I can't speak for all of you, but it doesn't suddenly make me go like, oh shit, the CIA is based, FBI is based, Oh man, Department of Defense, fucking poggies, y'all, when they do something good.
Before that, I was shaking his hands at VidCon. So only like probably three and a half years ago, maybe, talking to him about ad rates on YouTube.
I don't know what that name was. Gent Uyghur? Okay. Yes, Gent Uyghur of the Young Turkeys.
And then he started to lose it because, like you said, initially he's like, defund the place is wrong, and now he's embracing it. The left has dramatically changed. And I think there's one really easy and obvious reason. Young people who are authoritarian and pro-state were growing up, entering the public left, the political left, and influencing what was being said. And so now all of the prominent establishment leftists had to start falling in line with their change.
If you're confused, by the way, and you should be, because this is just utter nonsense, he is trying to establish in his own beanie timeline how there's a difference between, and we've isolated these groups before, the anti-imperialist left, which of course is going to be your Jimmy Dores, your Gray Zones, all these individuals who speak about how they're very firmly anti-imperialist, and well, at the same time, they usually work for Russia Tonight or other state-funded news organizations. and explaining why they are now different than the other groups of the left. And these groups of the left are not for freedom of speech. These groups of the left are for censorship. These groups of the left are for, I guess what he's going to try and pull this into is the idea that there's a large group of the left who are looking to just shut down every voice they don't like. Whereas there's others who are still like free Assange, you know?
Changing audience. So they embrace all that stuff. I've seen some sad stories. I'm not going to get into the full details, but I know some people who, I'm not going to get into full details. I know some people who have gone through severe depression. I mean, you live with these people. You're friends with them for 10 years. You've gone through all these adventures. You've said every awful thing you can think of because you're trolls and internet hackers who believe in free speech. And then one day, all of your friends are saying, you can't say that anymore. Everything you've done is wrong. And we're going to cancel you unless you come out in support of us.
Oh, no, I understand why. Don't worry. I'm going to move on to the next part pretty soon. I just need to get Tim Pool's full philosophy when it comes to this.
And then you're thinking to yourself, like, these people don't believe in anything we've done. They hate who we are. They hate what we've done. What do you do? So Cenk losing his mind, freaking out, snapping at me at Politicon. Yeah, he's trapped. He is trapped in that box.
Also, it's frustrating if you're like the network and you see all this talent come through your system and then they can go be more successful on your own and you're seeing your numbers drop, but your former employees doing well. Dave Rubin, I've done videos about how Anna and Cenk have been unbelievably nasty to Dave Rubin, talking about how like they never liked him. They wanted to hire his husband and they like embarrassed.
I always thought that Actual Justice Warrior just kind of looked strange, but that was just like the angle that he was looking at into the camera. But now that I see it from a new light, I can definitely stand by my original comment that he's kind of like he's kind of like a man cherub.
It's really nasty stuff that you should never air publicly. Jimmy Dore. The only difference with the Jimmy Dore thing is Jimmy Dore is using Cenk's rhetoric more effectively. Cenk's the big money in politics guy. He'll tell you if you take $5,000 as a congressman from the NRA, then you are corrupt and you want children to die by firearms. Well, Cenk took $20 million from Jeffrey Katzenberg. So when Jimmy Dore points that out, everything Cenk has been saying up until this time, Jimmy has the rhetorical advantage. And it's like, yeah, you shouldn't put all your eggs in the.
Hey, what up, Jingles? Yeah, it's your best friend. Yeah. Hey, I'll give you this, by the way. Someone wrote in the comments that you seem to be one of the more rational leftists that had gone on his show. So good on you. You're not doing the Lance thing where you give in to your emotions and you just can't have a conversation with the race realist for too long before you're like, I'm going to start saying things.
The money in politics basket.
What we're seeing with the meltdown of the Young Turks is it's exactly what you were saying. It's funny that you have these people who were all part of the network in some way, and they move on and find huge success. Jimmy Dore is still very much saying what he's always said. He's critical of the establishment. He's critical of Democrats and Glenn Greenwald as well. I remember I criticized Glenn Greenwald because I thought he was being unfair to CNN because he was doing this event and he was talking about CNN and I was like, come on, like, we can rag on the mainstream media, but hold on there a minute. Now I look at a lot of things they're doing and I've got my criticisms of Glenn Greenwald, absolutely, but I'm impressed that he stuck to his principles for as long as he did, to the point where he actually leaves the internet.
Like, I can see why he enjoys this brand of leftism, though, because most of them are just hypercritical of the squad, hypercritical of the Democrats, but we're also not entirely the same towards Trump. Like Aaron Maté, Max Blumenthal, a lot of them were of the mind that, yes, Trump is very bad, but Hillary Clinton will be worse. She's very war hawkish. Trump will be a nationalist, but an isolationist. He's not going to be engaged in foreign policy. And the same thing was then repeated during the Joe Biden election, that Trump is still very bad, but he hasn't been incredibly, let's just say, engaged in foreign policy of the same nature, which is kind of utter nonsense, because like the idea that Trump was just a complete isolationist it's just not true. Okay, his actions in Syria should speak enough there. His actions related to Iran should speak enough there. His consistent bombing should speak there. It's not as if Donald Trump suddenly turned down the meter on American imperialism. That doesn't just go off under Trump.
Intercept. Cenk Uygur is watching that. He's watching the people that used to represent, the people that do represent his values, what he actually believes deep down inside. But he knows he can't do anything because he's tethered to this contract. Here's what I think. 20 million. Who do you take it from?
Jeffrey Katzenberg.
So he can't just come out and say the things he wants to say because he has contracts. He's locked in place.
Is Katzenberg the Disney guy?
Yeah, a former Disney CEO. Yeah, big Hillary Clinton bundler.
Imagine you have a contract that's like, you got to do X, Y, and Z. And they're like, don't worry, we're all about the left and progressives, right? And you're like, this works. You sign the deal. Then the progressives become authoritarian crackpot ideologues. And you're looking at former employees leaving, and your ship is sailing, and you're like, I literally can't get off the boat because of the contract I signed.
So are they stuck under like a contract?
It's an investment. So like the fact that they're not profitable, like you have to make a return for your investors. It's not like they bought I'm sure they bought a portion of it. You don't give somebody $20 million for 0% of their company. But it's a private company, so a lot of the details are hidden. But yeah, it's that. But and what's funny about Glenn Greenwald and Jimmy Dore being anti-Cenk is that Cenk, Jimmy Dore, and Greenwald were all a part of the crew that tried to kick Sam Harris out of the left years ago. So like these are like, so when you were saying Glenn Greenwald was unfair, like not to CNN, to Sam Harris, yeah, unbelievably unfair to him. Jimmy Dore too, and Jimmy Dore, like even though I'm enjoying this, like I'm not a Jimmy Dore fan, and I can't stand people in my audience. So hi guys, that say Jimmy Dore's the correct leftist, Jimmy Dore's the good leftist. Like let me be 100% clear about something. Have you ever heard this idea that the Young Turks inspired a police shooting?
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, so it's the Baton Rouge one. I won't name the name for the algorithm.
So that's another endorsement. We've had a few endorsements for Jimmy Dore over the days, but there's another one. AJW, Tim Pool, both giving Jimmy Dore the thumbs up, the sign of approval, which is great. Which is great to see. You love to see it, you know. He could even do a segment on that.
Like, you see this? See this man here? All right, this is someone who gets it. He understands, all right? He's not for the elites. He's not for the globalists. He knows this. You see this? You see this man? He sees me.
Purposes. The Young Turk that inspired them was Jimmy Dore.
I do remember hearing about this vaguely. Yeah.
And you can find the videos online. So like for me, like it's a battle of the scummy. I will watch it for entertainment, but I'm not jumping on any team.
I like Jimmy Dore.
I like Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore is my guy. All right, so Jimmy Dore and a whole bunch of them have been using Aaron Maté as basically their expert on the ground in terms of understanding the crisis that's unfolding in Syria. I've said on the stream before that regardless if someone says that they are either pro-Bashar al-Assad or anti-Bashar al-Assad, most of them usually take a pretty hardline stance that Bashar al-Assad is not a good person, but at the same time, it's the US that is ultimately utilizing what we believe to be a false flag attack as a precursor for entering war. And I've said before on the show, you can acknowledge the horrors and atrocities of Bashar al-Assad and the multiple gassings that he's done against his own people, not this one that is in question, the one that is debatable and which seems to have been part of a debate recently, and then also acknowledge the fact that the United States will utilize whatever it wants ultimately as precursors these days. You know, like the invasion of Iraq was not done because they were ultimately trying to oust this evil person, Saddam Hussein, for the sole purpose that he was bent on destroying the earth with his weapons of mass destruction. I mean, that's what we were sold. That's what everyone was like, oh, well, yeah, sure. I mean, they weren't involved in 9/11, but 9/11 was still really bad, and I'm still really upset about 9/11. So, yeah, I guess let's invade Iraq. What could possibly go wrong? You know? So, this was a little thread sent to me by the Stoner Frouge. Last month, Aaron Maté went to Duma to lie to his viewership about who is responsible for the attack. The trip was sponsored by the Syrian Solidarity Movement. I have the receipts to prove that this was a front for the Syrian government and will show its ties to fascism. The About Us page of the SSM site said they were founded by two groups, one consisting of a group of activists around the anti-Semitic conspiracy theorist Ava Barlett. Great start. The other is a group headed by the pro-Assad nun, Mother Agnes Mariam of the Cross, and a representative of the organization called the Musalaha. I've clicked on these and I've gone through them. The problem with archived sources exclusively is that I cannot confirm without, like, beyond a reasonable doubt that they are 100% authentic. From the sources he has provided, they seem to be, but again, I cannot 100% confirm that. They were in creation of the Syrian regime under the authority of the Syrian Ministry of Reconciliation, and the Syrian Minister of Reconciliation is himself also the leader of the Syrian branch of the Syrian Social Nationalist Party. The SSN are basically Levantine Nazis. They went to unite Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine, and Iraq into a larger Syrian ethno-state. So the TLDR, the organization around Aaron's trip to Syria, is not a literal front for the regime itself, and it is for a literal Nazi party allied to the regime. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Uday Ramadan is the ideologue for the European Solidarity Front for Syria. This organization is the alliance between the Italian communists and the fascists, together in support of Assad. This is an example of the Red-Brown Alliance. The European Solidarity Front in Syria is a network of European fascist groups that support the Assad regime. Its coordinator is Matteo Copanetti, the leader of an Italian fascist group called the Zenit. The European Solidarity Front for Syria has organized a number of delegations from the European fascists to Syria to go meet officials for the Syrian regime. In 2015, the front organized a conference where Mother Agnes Mariam spoke alongside the leaders of the Casa Pound, and Mother Agnes Mariam had already founded the Syrian Solidarity Movement by then. Aaron Matei's trip to Syria was organized by a front for the regime and for the fascist organization allied to the regime that is also networking with the European Fash. The Syria Solidarity Movement and the European Solidarity Front for Syria are sister organizations. This is the source on this, which I will then use. Bellingcat did an article on this as well. A shadowy group that supports Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad is giving thousands of dollars to far-right activists, conspiracy websites, YouTube personalities, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, all under the guise of an award for uncompromised integrity in journalism. The Association for the Investment of the Popular Action Committees is an umbrella nonprofit based in San Francisco. It ostensibly exists to raise awareness of social justice issues that are key to sustainable world peace. In practice, this has meant bolstering support for Assad's regime, which was rewarded to the group and one of its main fronts, the Syrian Solidarity Movement, there's that name again, with visas and access to top officials in Damascus. The association is now rewarding its fellow travelers, a number of whom joined its treasurer at state-sponsored conferences this month, addressed personally to Bashar al-Assad to promote solidarity with the workers and the people of Syria. The Serena Shim Awards for Uncompromised Integrity in Journalism honors non-mainstream journalists who continue to tell challenging truths in difficult times. The funds provided by this award enable these courageous journalists to continue their work in an environment that penalizes them for the clarity of vision and willingness to expose the powerful. If you go through this, it obviously speaks about Aaron Matei, it speaks about Grey Zone, it speaks about Max Blumenthal. It also brings up, of course, Jimmy Dore, who has accepted, I believe, this award as well. The award and the money that comes with it was also given to several websites and blogs that routinely promote Assad conspiracy theories, including Information Clearinghouse, an anti-Semitic website that has published columns arguing for mass shootings that are false flag attacks. Moon of Alabama, which maintains the Zika virus was framed for birth defects actually caused by pesticides. Black Agenda Report, which argues the revolution in Sudan was a regime-changing operation. And Southfront, and a website that says the Serena Shim Award will aid its struggle against neoliberal globalist dystopia. So before I get a little bit more into Aaron Matei's trip, what is a little bit sus about this entire thing is where exactly the money came from for this trip itself, and the one that was taken for Aaron Matei to go and get the reporting on the ground that he did. And what exactly are the connections with, again, these far-right groups? This actually appeared in an article in Al Jazeera, and this one is called Drunken Journalism in the Shadows of Genocide. What a visit of a group of journalists and activists to Damascus can tell us about laundering genocidal regimes. Here I am on the border of Shobar, a neighborhood east of Damascus, occupied by Saudi-backed Jais al-Islam earlier in the year. Militia controls, so this is Max Blumenthal. A week after Damascus felted a delegation of the European far right, Bashar al-Assad's regime ushered in a new set of suitors. On Sunday, the American blogger and Sputnik contributor Max Blumenthal announced his arrival in Syria with a selfie. The caption read, "Here I am now on the border of Shobar." Blumenthal made it sure to insert his tweet into the Islamic versus Christian framed favored by the regime. He made it telling omissions. The tall building behind him is now referenced to the Zal Blatani Tower. The Zal Blatani Tower. In 2011, 2 years before Jaish al-Islam was formed, regime snipers shot unarmed protesters from its elevation. But this time, the regime forced Shobar's surrender in 2018. It had damaged or destroyed most of the district and subjected it to 10 chemical chlorine gas attacks. Shobar is part of the eastern Ghouta region, in which August 2013 was also the target of the deadliest chemical attacks since Halabja, killing over 1,400. Some of this may be down to ignorance, but as someone claiming to be an expert on Syria, Blumenthal can't be unaware of the significance of this location. Using geographical referencing in the image, it is possible to pinpoint his location to a balcony on the second floor of a building that houses the Bank of Syria overseas the Casa branch. The location puts him 450 meters to the west of the Zal Blatani Tower, just 220 meters north of the Bab Tuma Ranch. For the feared Air Force intelligence identifies by the comprehensive 212 report by the Human Rights Watch as one of the regime's main torture centers. Around 300 meters further in the same direction of Al-Khatib branch of the General Intelligence, another notorious facility known for its medieval torture methods. According to the UN, over 100,000 people have disappeared in Syria, many ending up at this torture archipelago. Sorry, my pronunciations are not not on point right now. Accompanying Blumenthal on a junket is Rania Kalek, a Twitter personality who produces viral videos for Russia Today and its subsidiary In the Now. Kalek's announcement of her arrival in Damascus was not dissimilar. With an image geotagged to Sandanya, Kalek invited her social media followers to admire the breathtaking view in Syria. This was about as seemingly as inviting viewers to admire a stunning sunset over Auschwitz. A journalist, Nick Waters of Bellingcat, demonstrated just out the frame within Kalek's field of view that the Sandanya prison, the notorious detention facility, according to 2017 Amnesty International report, 13,000 civilians were executed between 2011 and 2015. So what's really important about all this is I wanted to use Al Jazeera because then I can't get the accusations that I'm trying to uphold an imperial publication on the behalf of the United States. Al Jazeera is a Qatar state-funded organization that usually takes a very strong stance in regards to Palestine in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Anyways, this is all incredibly sus. It's not the first time it's happened, but this is, again, members of the gray zone flying out to areas that are, to put it lightly, notorious in terms of the amount of horrors and atrocities that have occurred there. And if you're going to state that it's guilt by omission or that I was not fully aware, that would be a little bit suspicious considering that you yourself are kind of going over there as an expert on this topic. I am not purporting to be an expert on these topics, by the way. I never would. One of the reasons why I'm trying to read from this article itself is in order to learn more about this. If this were the case, the media vultures wrangling freebies from a desperate and isolated regime, it would be easy to ignore, but this trip represents something bigger, the emergence of a new form of junket journalism that serves as a global laundering service for blood-splattered autocrats. In recent months, several of the key figures have turned up from capitals to Caracas to Managua, whitewashing mass repression. They have dismissed Uyghur concentration camps in Xinjiang, slandered protesters in Hong Kong, and they somehow all find Vladimir Putin unimpeachable. Indeed, Blumenthal's political reversal started with the Kremlin-sponsored junket to Moscow in 2015, to the same gathering where General Michael Flynn was compromised and where Jill Stein abased herself. This is different than pilgrimages that zealous ideologues used to make to the Soviet Union under Stalin, whitewashing the regime while it unleashed terror and famine. They were blinded by ideology and believed in utopia. The modern form of disaster tourist is purely mercenary, bereft of conviction, indifferent to suffering, driven purely by avarice. They are acutely aware of the regime's repressive character and odiousness of their form. Both Blumenthal and Kalek have in their past acknowledged the Assad regime's criminality, and in the case of Blumenthal, denounced those who serve as its apologists. Their embrace of the same role shows self-aware intention. Their flimsy attempts to justify the visit are telling. On the trip, Blumenthal and Kalek were joined by Yasemin Zara, a representative of the U.S. Labor Against War, Paul Rudi, a head of the pro-regime Syrian Solidarity Movement, Ajumu Baraka, Jill Stein's running mate, and various other pro-Assad conspiracy theorists. The cover story is participation to the Third International Trade Union Forum. The focus is on relieving Syrian workers by removing Western sanctions and investigating evidence of U.S. cruelty. Now, this is all very valid. Please don't get me wrong. I think the United States has no business, once again, interjecting themselves into the situation, especially from a militaristic standpoint. The United States does this frequently as part of, yes, their U.S. imperial ambitions. And by the way, imperialism is separate from colonialism. Let's not get the two conflated. All right, imperialism is imposing your will upon other governments and other countries. So in this case, the United States, again, is doing what they always do. That doesn't change the fact that there are people who I believe are acting in poor faith by not disclosing a lot of this information, not disclosing their purpose in being there, and everything that is coming from within. It's not transparent reporting to say that I was on the ground in this situation. Not that I in any way have had contact with a lot of these individuals, and especially, again, unfortunately, some far-right organizations. This strains credulity. The regime does not tolerate independent unions, and the country's only state-sanctioned union is controlled by the Ba'ath Party. The forum was presided over by Assad, who only last week was hosting a Euro-fascist delegation. The gathering predictably lambasted the West, but it did not utter a word in support of the Syrian workers disappeared by Assad's gulags. No one spoke up for Idlib. If the American delegation was truly interested in investigating U.S. crimes, they could have visited Raqqa, where the anti-ISIS campaign was also indiscriminate and killed a large number of civilians. But that, of course, was not the motive. If they cared about the Syrian workers, they could have sat so worshipfully and presided over the man at the UN who is accused of overseeing the crime of extermination. The women on the tour could have felt particularly queasy about being regaled by a regime that, according to the UN, uses rape and other forms of sexual violence as part of a widespread and systematic attack on the civilian population. But this was not a trip about Syrians. It was about a murderous regime baiting vultures with the prospect of momentary significance. This was a picture, I guess, of the group. This, by the way, Washington, Babylon, I have no idea. I'm assuming it's a right-wing rag because of how it's written. This article is just silly. But wait, there's someone who doesn't seem to be as happy and merry as the rest of the group. Take a look at the person third from the left. That's Aaron Matei of the Gray Zone, the band of dipwits who have one principle, though that's probably not the right word. If the US is in for it, we're against it. If the US is against it, we're for it. That applies across the board, specifically in regards to governments. The Gray Zone is for Syria, China, Nicaragua, Belarus, Venezuela, Zimbabwe, and Russia, amongst others. Who knows? Maybe Matei is unhappy when he realizes that going forward, no one reading his work will ever take him seriously as an independent reporter. Well, the thing is, a lot of people are taking them seriously. A lot of them are taking them very seriously, and it's getting a lot of amplification as well. And the shitty thing about all of this, by the way, at the end of the day, is that it's true in that the U.S. is performing some horrific atrocities, and ultimately, in many ways, when it consistently injects itself into other parts of the world, Afghanistan, Iraq, it makes them infinitely worse, and hundreds of thousands of civilians end up dying, all to increase the power of the U.S. war machine. That's all true. That's all horrifying. But a lot of this, when we get just bogged down on conspiracy theories, again, it ultimately makes the left look ridiculous. Because you've got people now here who are being amplified by people like Tim Pool, who are being amplified by people like Tucker Carlson, who Fox News is very, very willing to platform and put them on because all of them are speaking the truth to power and calling out the Biden administration. Like, they're all useful tools for both sides, right? The right-wing Republicans love all these people. They love putting Glenn Greenwald on. They love putting Aaron Matei on. They love amplifying every single one of their voices because these people are speaking out against the Biden administration specifically. So they're like, yes, please go on, show this side of it, show that the left also hates them. And there are a lot of reasons for the left to despise Joe Biden and to despise U.S. imperialism. That is all very well and true. But these people are doing it from a conspiratorial angle. All right. If you are going to start spreading the idea that, well, okay, there is this one instance where it seems dubious and there is a whistleblower involving a chlorine gas attack on the behalf of Bashar al-Assad. Okay, fine. Do you need to extrapolate that and then ignore every other single thing that's ever happened? Ignore all the other gas attacks that have been not only happened, but have been verified by multiple independent sources, bodies, organizations, governments, and still be able to sit back and say, but the U.S. doesn't have the ability to just be the arbiter of justice in the world at all times and pull them apart. Joshua Frank of Counterpunch has been challenging Matei on his trip to Syria. He's not listed as a delegate, and he says he paid for his own ticket, but he's not said anything about being an election observer as of yet, he told me last night. Frank made a few other observations on Twitter that are relevant here. Here's another photo where Aaron Matei is with the Syrian Minister of Information, Imad Abdullah Sarraj. Interesting. Matei didn't respond to that tweet, as far as I can tell, where he does reply, Frank, things didn't go well for him, as seen in this tweet below, which, after he was widely mocked, Matei deleted. And he writes, that does not seem reasonable to ask. That's not what I was asked. Joshua started out from the premise that the Syrian government paid for my trip, and then asked me to deny it. I paid for my trip. Yes, I've traveled with Syrian government minders to certain areas. That's how it's done here. Sus. That's how it's done here? That's one of the most pathetic things I've ever heard from a journalist. Why do real reporters work out with minders, even with dangerous? How's the hotel room? Food? Nice? Any comped? That's just the way it's done here? Number 2, what a sad joke you are now. I saw a comment from Matei, but I haven't heard from him yet. If I do, I'll update the story. Hey, Matei, were you an election observer to Syria's recent presidential election? Would you describe the vote as free and fair? As I've written elsewhere, one can make the argument that Assad, despite his massive and horrible flaws, could be the best bet for Syria at the moment, given what we have seen prior to US-sponsored regime change operations in Iraq and Libya. It's also possible that Assad could win a free and fair election. I have no idea, but that doesn't strike me as entirely implausible. But what is entirely implausible is that he won the May election with 95% of the vote. That's a very different thing than serving as a boot polisher and lobbyist for Assad. As bad as the most craven and despicable US lobbyist, DC bottom feeder Lanny Davis springs to mind here, as Matei is happy to do, and for a fraction of none of the cash, which makes it even worse. Aaron Matei is on a state-sponsored trip to Syria, where he's pushing the Assad historical revisionism propaganda and is engaged in genocidal denial. The same actions here. He condemns Palestine. He promotes here to whitewash the Assad regime. Evil doesn't even begin to cover it. I actually have no words for how sickening it is to watch these videos, and I'm not even Syrian, so I can't imagine what Syrians are going to do after all the killing, torture, imprisonment, displacement, and genocide they have witnessed. Syrians have been speaking out against Aaron Matei and his ilk for years now, only to be faced with ridicule, hostility, and indifference. What will it take for people to start listening? For example, Aaron Matei is absolutely sickening, a so-called journalist walking around amongst the rubble where thousands of Syrians once lived, doing what he does best, revisionism on behalf of a regime responsible for bombing Douma and for the rest of Syria to cinders. When will he stop promoting these charlatans? When will Syrians be treated with dignity and compassion they deserve? When will he recognize the freedom of one oppressed group cannot come at the expense of another? Seething genocide deniers celebrating for speaking out against Israel while they were spreading dehumanizing pro-regime narrative is infuriating to say the least. That passive voice sounds familiar. Interesting part of the discussing vid is Matei's use of passive voice, favorite strategy of corporate media to whitewash US and Israeli war crimes, as well as the murder by cops. Yarmouk was destroyed. Palestinians were displaced. By whom? Or who knows? It was a dirty war. Yeah, it's absolutely brutal. There's there's things you can say about the OPCW cover-up, and there's a lot of things you can say about the brutality of sanctions by the United States and the horrors and atrocities that are being brought upon those areas by United States interventionism. All very true. Well, at the same time, if you look at the origins of the Syrian war, and you look at basically how the people of Syria were being inspired by other uprisings that were happening at the time. This was in the height of the Arab Spring. There were giant movements in Egypt, for example, and people in Syria were also being inspired to, protest their own government. And the crackdown that happened by Bashar al-Assad against his own people and the eventual proxy war that developed afterwards from all these different factions and actors coming in there. You can't look at the atrocities committed by Bashar al-Assad against the democratic, revolt of his own people, and then look at that as this kind of we're not entirely sure what happened. It's tragic what occurred here, but we don't fully understand the severity of the situation. Here's where things take a wee bit of a darker turn. I said I was going to go deep. I got some receipts, okay, from Ben Norton, another actor involved in this entire event. Ben Norton tweeted out, and these are now deleted, another extremely dubious New York Times story on China's Xinjiang region originating with outlandish claims by the so-called Uyghur Human Rights Project, a separatist group created and funded by the US government regime arm, the NED, a CIA cutout, more Cold War propaganda against China. To portray the voluntary employment as dastardly Chinese forced labor, this New York Times imperialist stenographer relies on anti-China experts from the warmongering think tank CSIS, who funds CSIS. All these corporate media stories on China and Xinjiang are the same. They're weaponized as information. Now, this is not the stuff I'm calling out yet, okay? This is pretty part and parcel for Ben Norton. I'm coming up to this part. This was the part that got big old yikes. Ben Norton retweets Duke of Kin, and Duke of Kin says, "The New York Times is really something. Amazing that they could spin this as slave labor. FYI, unpaid labor doesn't require government subsidies to be economical when workers don't even have a choice. Subsidies are required when worker productivity is below market wage to incentivize." And then Ben Norton adds, more on the latest ridiculous anti-China propaganda in the New York Times, which is just a mouthpiece of the US government that exists to manufacture consent of new wars and imperial conquest. Now I hear you saying, who is Duke of Kin? Or Duke of Klin? Duke of Klin, it turns out, is a far-right neo-Nazi. Yeah. Like a hardcore anti-Semitic far-right neo-Nazi. Now, in Ben's credit, I don't know if he knew that before quote tweeting, but he probably should have clicked on at least one of their tweets to read what they're all about. But I have done so for you. Duke of Kin. Your massive illiterate followers. I don't follow genocide denialists. Me, the Turk is the eternal enemy of the Han. Genetic lineage and racial warfare is not only a historic but biological inevitability that serves both eugenic and pro-social purposes. The difference is that the Communist Party isn't pushing ethno-nationalist revanchism or the annihilation of targeted populations. The platform of the NSDAP was not subtle nor its messaging to the German people. The Jews were the problem and their expulsion from Germany the solution. Yep. You got straight up final solution was a good thing kind of discourse going on here. Interesting, Ben Norton. What else we got? Oh, women aren't loyal, or why it's not a coincidence that 95% of the English language Chinese journalists in the West are women with zero patrilineal Chinese children amongst them, grandparents cry, and the remainder are homosexual men. So you got your Hitler was good. You got your neo-Nazi stuff, and you got your sexism and your homophobia all wrapped up into one. All wrapped into one big old thing. So, this was not the first of gray zone mishaps. When I started looking through the links, there was multiple examples of the gray zone also retweeting, quote tweeting, or straight up interviewing anti-Semites, interviewing people who are in previous times engaged in far-right fascism. I'm not saying, all right, through the course of this discovery that there is a decided problem or an alliance forming. I know the term the Red-Brown Alliance is thrown around a lot. I'm just saying the receipts are super yikesy. And there's a lot of questions to be asked. I'm just asking questions, you know. I'm just doing the Glenn Beck thing. I'm gonna draw a giant wall behind me, you know. I can use all these tweets, or maybe I don't even need a wall. I can just do the Jimmy Dore thing.
You see this, huh? Huh? You see this? Yeah, anti-Semitism.
But it is pretty yikes. It's big old yikes. You know, it's not a good thing. It's definitely something they should answer. I think they should just be more transparent because, again, you can definitely say, and it's not a matter of secrets, that TYT has gotten funding from a pro-democratic $20 million funder that was pro-Hillary Clinton. And yes, Hillary Clinton was a massive war hawk and probably would have ramped up U.S. imperialism. And absolutely, there's probably a narrative being pushed now after you get $20 million. That's definitely going to influence your branding. You're probably going to speak out a lot more against conservatives than you are against Democrats, that kind of stuff. Sure. But also the gray zone is fucking hella sus. Hella sus. All right? Their transparency is not what I would call good. And their amount of links to deeply anti-Semitic individuals is also frightening. You know, incredibly frightening.
You see this? You see that? You look at that? Look at that little sausage. Huh? Right there. A little sausage.
Do you want movies and Serfs watching the movies? So then come over to the new channels. It's the Serfs Cinema. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Can you do the thing, you know, that thumbs up and comment and all those things that help us out in the algorithm that controls every aspect of our lives? Also, if you happen to have a Facebook account, can you delete it? Like just delete it. You should probably delete your Facebook account because it's not a great company. But hey, if you can't do that for whatever reason, I understand. And could you also go to facebook.com/thesurftimes then and give us a little like and a follow. We're just trying to push back against the fact that people like Ben Shapiro happen to dominate the platform entirely. And when everyone asks why do older generations believe the things they believe, one of the problems is the majority of them on social media use Facebook. So to counter that, we're just going to be on there too now. Also, if you happen to have a union or a worker co-op or even a leftist project, podcast, website, Zoom, MySpace, it doesn't matter. We will advertise it for free on this channel. All you got to do is go to weareserfs.com and use the forms that we got there, weareserfs.com. Thanks, everybody.
To our wonderful gods, Xander Corvus, VK Jehannam, T. Gros, and Peyton L. Juste. May you smite all of our enemies. To our monarchs, Tom Spiker and the Tim Caucus, we are your humble servants, ready to do all your bidding. To our lords, Evan Nudie, Trevor R., Alexander Thaler, Ryan Lubin, and Jeff Lamb, we shall proudly carry your banner on the online battlefield. To our Knights of the Round Table, Val 9000, Jenna Tal, Dark Puppy, Quiet 185, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, Multimondi, Trevor Janis, Lemmy 101, Anthropophojack, Saren 42, Chronic the Hemphog, Phone Jenny, Radical Maniac, Ramon Acosta, Jimmy Big Nuts, Violent Orchard, Sophie Baby, Political Puppy, Andreas Chiringuito, Zach Christensen, Yopi, Josh Mickelson, Todd Buckingham, and Todd Lajeunesse. We raise our glass and we raise our swords and we salute you.